right, guys, it's Nolan Walker here with Roofers Paradise. I'm joined by Quinn Martin of MCSquared Roofing. What city are you in? Are you in?
We're in Burlington, North Carolina.
Burlington, North Carolina. So if you wanted to look him up, Burlington, North Carolina, it is MCSquared. It doesn't have the squared on the top. It's just MC, the word squared roofing. But yeah, if you don't mind, Quinn, introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about yourself, and then to start out with, if you would, please.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Quinn and owner of MCSquared Roofing. And I got my start in the roofing industry at right around 12 years old. So my stepdad had a roofing company. Okay. And when I say a roofing company, he had a word of mouth referral, knocking on doors roofing company. Just him and a couple buddies, they installed the roofs. So I started out, just picking up shingles off the ground and then watching everything. So One day my stepdad got down to take 5. I jumped up there, grabbed the nail gun, started shingling. And
how old were you?
When I started shingling, I was probably closer to 15-ish.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds about right. All right.
Yeah. So, lots of years of just picking up debris and stuff and hauling shingles.
Okay.
And then once I was old enough to drive, I got a pickup, bundle of shingles, and a ladder, and started driving around, knocking on doors, doing blow-offs.
Wow. So that was with the family business, I presume. You're too young to start your own business by then? Or?
I was doing it on my own. Yep. So I was 16, doing it on my own. Unlicensed, just knocking on doors, seeing the way that he had done it and copying.
Were you a sub, or you were literally just selling your own roof and doing it? People were paying you as a teenager? Yeah,
and it was just little blow-offs, stuff like that. So no big jobs. But as I got older, those started turning into full jobs.
Right.
And a lot of contractors, don't want to turn down anything but shirt color. So they'd ask me, do you paint? Absolutely, I paint. Do you, do gutters? Do you do siding? I didn't have a gutter machine. I didn't ever do gutters. But siding, I ended up doing kitchen and bathroom remodels, big jobs, and just learned on the fly.
Wow.
Never turned down a job.
Wow. So what age was that, in a car with your own business, with no license, no state document, no business account, nothing?
Yeah, that was like 16, 17. I was doing that just on the weekends, going out and making a little bit of spare money.
That's pretty cool. I was mowing lawns at that age. You stepped it up a bit,
Yeah, so, the money was maybe a little bit better in some shingles, but I wasn't out there charging an arm and a leg. Like
that's probably why you got the jobs.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I'd go out there and replace 5 cabs for, $100 or so.
Huh. Well, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool stuff, though.
And then we moved on from there, and we started doing the full kitchen and bathroom models, like I was saying, and we grew to the point that I'd have 2 roofs on one side of town, have a deck on the other side of town, and a fence on the other side of town, and got to where it was just too much of a headache, having to pay those guys to know all the different trades or to have specialty crews, and it was too much for me. So we kind of decided to go back to our roots of installing roofs.
Right. This is a really common topic. And let me, I'm going to write a note down and come back to it. But so a lot of guys get into construction and then want to do a roof. And the reason they do is because it's really hard to manage a lot of stuff. I talk about this concept a lot because I have people on here and they make these comments that are like popular to say, like, delegate, manage everything out, hire people in all these positions. And I'm not saying you don't delegate and hire people or manage. I delegate, hire people, manage, and have procedures, but there's limits to managing people, whether it's like digital marketing stuff like I do, or especially if it's hard labor like you do and salespeople. So hard labor and salespeople are 2 of the most difficult things to manage. And this is why, at least in certain categories, you don't find like one company with a nationwide presence for, say, residential roofing. Very, very difficult. My family grew up in the flooring business. We're going to talk about family in a little bit. And back then, I think the only person that you ever saw, or the only company, was like Color Tile. And they did some flooring. You remember they had the sign that was all different colors of tile. But But my family did, we'll get into that in a minute. But the point is that the only people that ever got into flooring was Home Depot, Lowe's, like nationwide, but they had this heavy duty infrastructure and money to support it. And so when I hear people saying they don't do stuff, the reason you get out of that is because it's very difficult to manage that fence with one type of job, manage the backsplash color change out and with the bathrooms. And then you want to do roofing because you can do more business and make more money when you can streamline it. And I'm assuming that somewhere in this, you got into streamlining the business and marketing in order to try to make more money. Because even though it's great to just stay busy all the time with some bathrooms and some shingles and some siding, you realize that you weren't actually making more money, I'm assuming. Maybe even not making money sometimes, right? When you did all this stuff.
And that's one of the things on that interior work, and really in general, I'm a perfectionist to a fault.
Yeah.
So if there was any lippage, if a grout line was off, something like that, I was removing tiles, taking a half day grinding down thin set, replacing tiles.
Right.
That bathroom had to look perfect when I walked out of it. And it'd be stuff that a customer would never have even noticed had I not pointed it out. But I always pointed it out. I wanted to be the one to catch the problem first before they did. I didn't want them to have to come to me with a problem. So yeah, I did jobs just to break even, just to get the review, like we were talking about, working for the review. So yeah, it just wasn't really working out for me. Profit margins were really low. I'd make the same amount of money on a 2-week bathroom model that I'd make on a roof in a day.
Right. Yeah. Part of that too, I've an old 90s phrase, get in where you fit in. You find some people can do a larger business and do all this, and some people can't. You realize your limitations. Like for me, at least when it's a service oriented business, I can run a crew because I'm 49. I've done this a long time. I know I can run a crew of about 25 people, 15 to 25 people. I can run that crew, and I'm extremely good at that. Now, if I push beyond that, not necessarily part of it's my limitation, part of it's the limitation of dealing with human labor. There's a diminishing state of returns, and I know what I can do and can't do within my business. And I would argue that on this point, that if you don't figure this out pretty quickly and you don't figure out where your level is at that point in time in your life. So you might grow to where it's like, hey, Nolan, I'm going to run 5 states. You're just wrong. Well, most people aren't ever going to do that, and they don't have the skill set to do that, or there's other things stopping them from doing it. You can find money and happiness with just a one-man show, selling 75 roofs a year, busting your butt, making $500,000 and investing that money, or you might be able to do 500 or 1,000 roofs, but that has skill sets and service limitation to it. And if you fight beyond wherever your level is, you basically increase expenses, decrease conversion, and erode profits. And I think I don't know how to tell people where to find their level, where they fit in right then, but there's profits for somebody at every point in their life. But most of us, because we're aggressive entrepreneurs, push way beyond that and blow up our profits and infrastructure over and over again until you figure it out. Do you think that you've kind of figured it out at this point in your life as to where you're making money and successful on it?
Yeah, I definitely do. When COVID hit and we couldn't go out and bid roofs, we weren't allowed to go out and bid roofs. Right. Kind of started thinking there's got to be a better way to do this. Why do I have to go out? We've been using satellites for years to get measurements. So if I get a request for a quote, I can sit there and use the satellite and measure it up myself. I can see exactly how many lineal feet of ridge there are, how much starter, every single piece of material that goes into that roof. And then I compile email from my customers, email it out to them with 5 different roof options. And then they just pick the roof that fits their style and budget, sign online, pay online, schedule online, and send us out.
Have you seen an uptick in the willingness for people to accept a sale this way?
That's a lot of people ask that. That's a high ticket item to be buying online.
It is.
But my counter to that is people are buying cars online, left, right, and center. That's something you're sitting in. You want to know what the cup holders look like, all that stuff. Nobody's sitting on the roof on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
So you want your roof to look really good and you want it to perform really good.
Right. You drive up, it looks okay. That's a nice thing from a construction standpoint, contractor standpoint about the roof. People don't even really have, what percentage of people actually get on the roof when you do, I mean, hardly anybody actually stands on the roof, right?
5%.
Right.
Very, very few, especially if you've got a steeper roof. You know, if you've got a shallow roof, they might get up there with you. But
if you're doing a kitchen, they're looking at knobs, grout, colors. Is that the color we ordered, Quinn? You know?
Yeah,
like,
and they're asking the questions in real time as you're doing the job.
Right.
They've got concerns that you've already got planned out ahead of time. And
right.
Yeah, it's a pain. Interior work is terrible.
I can't tell you how many contractors, general contractors, and builders that I've spoken to that have made the transition into roofing because of all the stuff we're talking about. I'd like to go back just for a second and talk about those estimates. I don't know that there's like a trusted industry report, but most people will tell you that give an estimate. If they give like 2 or 3 choices, their sales closes go up considerably. A lot of this will be for, like, I hear this the most on commercial, like, yes, we can replace the metal roof, but we could also caulk the fasteners and coat it for this amount, or we can remove the TPO, but we could also coat it. We could coat it with this coating, or we could do a fabric underlayment for this amount. So they'll give, or we could even foam it and then coat it, and they'll give like 3 different quotes. But you said you gave 5 quotes.
We give 5. And the reason for that is I'm not sitting there for 2 hours, you know, in a homeowner's house presenting to them, trying to talk them into a certain roof. We're not trying to sell anybody a roof. We're trying to give them the opportunity to buy a roof. Right. And so if we give them the options, I'm not going to assume that they want the stone coated steel top of the line roof. I'm also not going to assume that they want this cheap little 3-tab roof that's going to last them 15 years. I'm going to let them decide what's right for them. And in our proposals, we send just tons of information on each shingle. We send the brochure for each and give them the information that they need to choose the roof that's right for them. And really, it mostly comes down to budget.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. If anybody's not doing it, what percentage of roofers do you think just give one bid?
So many.
Really?
So many. You know, customers, and I never ask a customer to show me a competing bid, but a lot of times they just volunteer it. And you'll see it's 1 or 2 little line items and then $14,000 at the bottom. If I'm spending $14,000 with you, I'd like to have an idea of what I'm getting. We list the nails we use. We list every single item that we're using in each proposal.
Right. Well, that's interesting.
It's not a guessing game.
Yeah, nail and brochure and all that, you said. Nolan Walker here with Roofers Paradise. I'd like you to consider being a guest. If you've got a great story to tell for your roofing company, you don't have to be a client of Roofing Webmasters. We'll have you on the show. Check us out at roofersparadise.show. Shoot us an email, or you can call us from the phone number you'll find on roofingwebmasters.com. But I'd love to hear from you and maybe have you as a guest on Roofers Paradise. So, I mean, anything, so from the days of you drive around in your car as a kid, I mean, what do you do differently nowadays? I mean, are you, do you have estimators out in the field? Do y'all knock doors? Do you do anything like that? Or is it all pretty much outreach for inbound calls these days?
Mostly outreach for inbound calls. We do some social media and Google AdWords and stuff like that. And then I've got a HAG certified inspector. So after we've gone ahead and decided what roof we want and everything, he goes out there and he inspects, sees if there's any soft plywood, inspects inside the attic, double checks how many layers they have, verifies a measurement or 2, and just make sure that we're all on the same page. Right. And then the same guy goes out afterwards to make sure the install is good. He's going to walk around the building, make sure everything's cleaned up really well. That's going to be your first bad review, is if you do a bad job on the cleanup. And then every single job that we sell, I'm the last person on the job site.
So you do go to every job still? Every
single one. Yeah.
Okay.
So I go over, I pull the yard sign.
When it's over, you go. When it's finished.
When it's over.
Okay.
Yep. I pull the yard sign, talk to the customers, make sure they're happy with everything. And then I do a walk around the house too. Right. And the debris that I pick up, is more than can fit in the palm of my hand, somebody screwed up.
Right.
So I take that same perfectionist level to roofing that I did to the interior remodel. It's just a little easier to build the culture around it.
I wonder how much better your lifestyle is now doing it this way, though. It seems like an improved lifestyle to me, you know? So
I hate selling.
yeah.
I always have, from the day I was knocking on doors to always. I don't want to sell somebody a roof. You know, I've never had any sort of sales training, and I've never had salesmen working for me.
Let's talk about this for a minute, because I kind of consider myself like the unintentional salesman, you know, and I talk about this a lot because I'm a very introverted guy overall, not the life of the party guy. I've got a brother who's in flooring, and he's extroverted, and he gets energy off of sales and talking to people, and it wears me out. So if I go to a social gathering, I'm like, oh, I'm exhausted. I had to be on my best behavior, you know, for too long and talk to people. But I always have sold, and I've always had people say, I really like working with you, Nolan. And I'm like, over the years, I've learned that really, in my opinion, the guy that doesn't think he can sell is usually introverted. And most people like talking to the introverted guy that doesn't think he can sell if he's skilled and passionate about and has, you know, and has good intention for the client. So that person actually sells better, but doesn't want to sell. And it comes down to somebody just like you being, mainly that person too, is typically has expertise. They know their product. They believe in it. They want to do a good job. You know, it's the guy that's extroverted, that's trying to sell everybody, that's running around cutting corners, doesn't care if they produce on it, trying to slam a commission, you know, that sort of thing. And people hate that guy. In fact, that may be why some of this works. They want to talk to somebody over the phone because they're having PTSD with like, oh, this guy, Quinn, doesn't sound bad on the phone, but who's he sending out here? I don't want some joker out at my house trying to hard close me a big ticket item, you know? So,
and that's the whole thing. I mean, you go to a car dealership, at least you can stand up and say, I'm gone.
Yeah.
Here, you've got that hard sale salesman sitting in your kitchen,
in your house. Yeah.
You know, who needs it?
Yeah. So I always have respect for the door knockers and roofing, and I still think it's a brilliant thing to do, especially if you're starting a business and doing everything. But you did the same thing I did. So I'm not going to glamorize this. When I was in home security, when I was younger, and I got in a young, like I was about 20 years old, maybe 21, and I went out of business a couple of times, and then the last one was a huge success. But I was too much of a chicken, too much of a wuss to knock a door. Basically, I had too much fear involved with knocking the door. But everybody knocked doors in home security and in roofing; those were the two. And I just moved, and ADT knocked my door, and I'm like, man, it ain't gonna go, buddy. I'm sorry, you know. But I have respect for them, but I never did it. And since I never did it, I focused on the inbound call. And you might find this interesting. I told you a negative story about a phone sale, but I didn't tell you my positive story. So I'll tell this real quick because I find it intriguing, because you're pushing the envelope just a tiny bit here. Not too much, but you're pushing the envelope a little bit, meaning people will probably accept them over the phone sale, but they're not outwardly asking for it, right? So most people will still go on the website's made traditionally. Yours a little different. But when I was, oh God, I was 21 years old. I remember I used to always try to sell a lot of alarm systems, especially on my birthday. If my birthday didn't fall on a Sunday, I would drive around. I remember one time I sold 4 or 5 on my birthday, but it'd wear me out even when I was in mid-20s. So I was selling like crazy. Sometimes I'd sell 30 alarms in a month by myself. I'd drive around getting paperwork signed, social security numbers, paperwork, triplicate form, long sheets, front and back on 36-month monitoring agreements so that they could be sold off for you. Anyway, so I was doing all that traditionally, and Brinks Home Security had tried this back in the 80s, and it had failed. So I wasn't the first one to try this, but they had stopped, and everybody sent people into the home. I don't know, something I had been selling, and I was becoming a pro at it. And I'm like, I'm sick of driving around, and I can't sell enough. And I was getting more leads because I was working on the brand. And phone started ringing one day, and I just started selling them over the phone. And I sold 20 something thousand over the phone, by the way. Never sent a salesperson out again, never dealt with it again, never touched it again. And like banned it. I was like, I'll never do it again. And I was the first person that I know of to do that in home security successfully. Now, post me doing that, Brinks picked it back up. Pro One picked it up, Protection One, Pro One picked it up. The industry changed around me. I don't know. I know people recognized me from doing it because I sold a ton back in the day in Dallas, Fort Worth, and Houston. But yeah, I did that phone sale and I focused on the brand and the inbound phone call. And at times my phone rang so much, I couldn't even get to it. But that was after 9/11, different story. But anyway, you know, things will change. And you're probably early, but not too early. Meaning,
I think we're right at the start of it. And I think COVID had a lot to do with kicking something like this off, you know.
And there's a big problem here with all this, though, like leads, a phone call. So how are you, I mean, did you have a business? How many, if you don't mind me asking, how many roofs y'all do in a year typically right now? Like,
we're not burning down the barn. We might be around 70 or 80 right now.
Okay.
But we're trying to get our foot in the door and really start.
But you're efficient and your overhead is low, right?
Much lower. Yeah. And we're actually able to, since we're not paying a commission like everybody else is, we don't necessarily give that break to our customers. But we pay our crews enough that they're not going to run away when I'm nagging at them to clean up better and just really up their butts about how good of a job they have to do because I'm paying them to do that good of a job.
So I talk to people about door knocking too, and they'll say, oh, door knocking is cheaper than web work, or door knocking is cheap. I said, hey, I love door knocking, but the reason door knocking is not cheaper than web work is because you have to get a van. You have to get a manager. You have to put ads in Craigslist and ZipRecruiter. They're coming through and people big shot talk to me and go, I got 20 people. I'm a big shot. I own all this stuff. And I'm like, you got 20 people to work for free and 18 of them quit. I know the door knocking game and there's nothing wrong with it. And I think that if you're good at door knocking, you should definitely door knock. So I don't want anybody getting me wrong on it. What I'm saying is that it costs more than they're letting on to. And on top of that, it's extremely stressful. And there was part of me, I did go pick up door knockers, by the way. It's not that I didn't try. I felt, I still had some thoughts in my head where I had some feelings where I felt bad about the people that, like people couldn't get a job, but they'd come knock a door with me. And some of these people were tragic. It was pathetic. It was sad. And I don't know that I took advantage of them because they weren't going to work anyway, but it felt bad. You know what I mean? Like, so I didn't feel good about myself sometimes.
I've knocked a ton of doors and, you know, you have to be so on the whole time. And that's, you were talking about wearing you down. That's what wore me down, just having to be on and almost just not be myself. I just want to be able to be myself. But I think if you're going to hire door knockers, hire good quality people, because if you're really thinking about your customer, you can't be sending out just the dregs of society to knock on doors and represent your company.
I was a kid though, and I learned that I didn't want to hire these people that couldn't sell anyway because they'd waste their time and I'd waste their time, and it made me feel bad. But also, yes, the attrition rate or the client cancellation rate of these sales was horrible. It was horrible. And so all these other problems ensue with it. But again, some guys getting in where they fit in are pros at door knocking, like the best it's ever been. And then I still don't mind the 6-pack. Like if you're doing a job and you're not a door knocker, you go say, hey, ma'am, hey, sir, we're over here. If you hear some noise, we're over here. Just letting you know. And if you want to bid, here's a card, just no pressure. I think that's smart, you know. For guys.
And we do that too. Yeah, we'll knock the neighbors, the immediate neighbors, but we've got a reason to be in that neighborhood. We're not just going out and, oh, these guys got some wind, these guys got some hail, let's go out here and see what's going on, and knocking on random neighborhoods in our area.
Well, I love this concept. So is this mainly shingle then almost entirely, or do you do anything else?
Metal, yeah. So in this area, and I hate it. I hate that we even have to offer it, but we'll lose out on so many jobs if we don't. People use ag panels for roof.
Okay, that's right.
So
Yeah.
the corrugated just screw through the surface of the metal.
Right.
You see it everywhere. And
Right.
the salesmen are out there. They're not looking out for the homeowners when they're selling these.
Right.
You know, these things are going to have to replace the screws, the grommets.
It gives a look that people like cheaply, but it's lasts how long before all the fasteners start to loosen?
10 to 15 years you need to replace those. So you've got to get longer screws. You've got maintenance, just a ton of maintenance on those roofs. Standing seam is an excellent roof.
Right.
And then of course, stone coated steel is a great roof.
Right.
We use Atlas. We stand behind Atlas here.
Man, I've talked to a lot of guys love Atlas right now. I mean, it seems like a love fest with Atlas currently. I don't think the consumers know them that well, but the roofing industry seems to be rallying behind Atlas. Why is that? Why Atlas right now?
Well, they've got the Scotch Guard for the blue-green algae, which is great. But then they've also got, so it's 130 mile an hour wind warranty with only 4 nails, and jumps up to 150.
With how many nails?
With 4 for the 130 and 6 nails for 150 mile an hour, which is great wind warranty. But if we're being honest, and I tell my customers this too, don't buy it based on the warranty. If you get wind that high, your insurance is covering it. You're not using your warranty. You should.
True.
But people are hitting the insurance instead of the warranties. So they get away with just having outlandish warranties. All these manufacturers do, and
do you get
they don't have to stand behind them.
You getting a pretty good deal from Atlas and good customer service, I'm assuming?
I am. Yeah.
Nolan Walker here for Data Pins. You may not know, but I own a software company, and we have a proprietary software called Data Pins, DATAPINS. You can search it at datapins.com. This is not white labeled. I actually own this piece of software, and I made it for you. It was made for contractors. You can actually take pictures of jobs, up to 6, make a caption about the material, the brand, the situation, the repairs, and post that back to your individual pages on your website, just like that. It's super simple. Anyone could use it. It also texts and emails your clients direct links to your reviews, so it helps reputation and reviews, which helps conversion and map placement. The geo coordinate gets grabbed by Data Pins, and Google can tell where you are. So instead of them just seeing reviews, they see all jobs or even estimates that you do. This vastly outperforms just getting reviews. Helps the map show up, helps organic keywords. And remember, those captions that you're putting in there help expand the keywords per page, and it's great regular content. I love it. We made it just for you. It is organic optimization on steroids for both your website, your rankings, and the map placement. Check out Data Pins. I think you'll be happy you did. So are those shingles coming from like a ABC or Home Depot, or where are you getting your supply from?
So we use Superior here locally.
Okay.
They're an SRS company, which is nationwide.
Okay.
And then, but you know, the bigger companies around here, the companies that shall not be named with the fluffy clouds and the pink panther on them, they're using the Home Depot or the big box store shingles.
Home Depot drops them off, some GAF shingles and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. But they're sending out the sharpshooter salesmen that we're talking about.
Owens Corning, I guess, with who you mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah. They're paying double for a roof because they had a smooth talker sitting in their house for 2 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. That smooth talker gets paid a lot. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So we've eliminated that and made things a little bit better for the customer. Hopefully
I did the same thing. I did. Yeah, it'll work if you know, this requires branding, showing up as much as possible. And then once there's a funnel of stuff coming in, you have I'll say something else about this before we get off this topic. I did a 1795 alarm monitoring and a takeover. So we left the equipment up, but people didn't do that back then. We had a manual with like 200 different ones. We could reprogram anything. But it was cheap. You know, we were cheap. Everybody else was pushing $30 already on 36 months. I'd do a 1795 on 12 months. I'd come out for nothing, 0 down. And then I'd finance. I'd do a little C-level financing back then, and I'd get a front line credit loan against the paper, and I'd keep them, which was brilliant. But I could run my whole company off a 15 multiple. Most people needed 25 or 30 just to run. The reason it ran low and ran on that, because they didn't have salespeople and all that overhead and infrastructure, and it was ludicrously profitable. Back in 2000, 2, 3, 4, 5, I made over $1 million a year net way back then because my expense structure was so stinking low. So hitting something during a transition works. And not only did I do it differently, you're talking about how much they paid for these roofs. I sold them for less and made way more money. And it was better and it was easier and everybody liked it more, So yeah.
My thought on that is instead of giving it back to the homeowners, and we do give some of it back to the homeowners, some of that price reduction back to the homeowners, but I want to pay the guys that are up there risking their lives every single day. I want them to be paid.
Yeah. You
that's
just paid it
important.
a little bit differently. It makes more sense. And yeah, they're going to take your job before somebody else's. Okay. So I've got so we were going to talk about this. You and I talked about it beforehand. I'll share first, or you can share first, but we're going to talk. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family of sorts, and you did as well. And we've had some family disagreements and problems because of it. Mine didn't go well at all. And I'm going to try to change that with the next generation coming up. But do you want to share first, and then I'll tell a story too? Because I haven't ever shared this with anybody, but I'm 49 and I don't care anymore. This is I'm too old to care and I'm too old to complain.
Sure.
It still affects me as a human, but I'm past caring about anyone knowing about it. So if you have anything you'd like to share, and what we're going to talk about is just really the problems that arise when you work with family or even a partner. And I'm going to talk about that too.
Yeah. And we don't have a partner or anything. It's my wife and I guess my wife is my partner.
That's acceptable. You're going to have to do that, right? So
yeah. But no, I've worked with my stepdad and we've butted heads a little bit and stuff like that, but we parted as friends. I've got a couple uncles I'll tell you this story real quick. So one of them was out mowing his lawn and ran over a beehive.
Wow.
And he and my other uncle hated each other at this time already. And so he calls up my uncle just reminiscing. Hey, do you remember that time we got into the beehive? So my other uncle says, I told you if you ever call me again and somebody's not dying, that you'll be dead. And he jumped in his car with his gun and went over to my other uncle's house and was going to kill him. So, and they had worked together. They both owned machine shops.
And he did what? And what did he do when
he ended up leaving, but he went over to his house with a gun.
Okay.
So things can definitely escalate.
Yeah.
But as far
there's
as
a lot of obviously there's a lot of backstory there to get to that point.
There is. Yeah. But you can see how things can escalate to a really bad point really fast. But I know that you've had some stuff with your step family.
I've got, we both had this. So when when I was 14, my mother got remarried, and I don't really blame my mother for divorcing my dad or anything. Like as I got older, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Not ideal for a kid, for a family, unit, but I get it. But she'd married my stepdad, who was in flooring business, and he was a known local just jerk, and I'll keep my language fairly clean here, but he was a huge known local jerk. He'd bankrupted every wife himself several times. He'd been married 4 times. I think my wife was the fourth. My mother was his 4th wife, and she stayed married to him. She was a preacher's daughter, so it was and so she divorced once, and it was very taboo in my family to get divorced again.
Right.
But she also was very she wanted money and prestige. My stepfather was about 15 years older than her, 12 years older. He would run around town with a pile of money, with hundreds folded, and always have a pocket full of money. And in flooring, you got cash back then, probably roofing back then too. People were hiding money more than they do nowadays.
Yeah.
And from taxation, they'd buy stuff like flooring. With the cash. So he'd run around, and we went to the fanciest restaurants, by the way, the fanciest places, but the guy never invested money. He was always blowing money. He would sell back then, and this is old school stuff, but you remember floating checks? You ever heard of that before? I don't know how old you are, but you could go sell you go sell flooring, you go sell a roof to pay for the bounce checks that are about to hit, because you're negative in the account. But since things weren't automated, it'd take 2 weeks for everything to clear. So we were always running negative in the bank account, not my business, my stepdad's and mother's business. And it was horrible. Like we'd got, well, oh, your carpet's on back order. Well, no, they can't afford to go pick it up at the supplier. And this is horror story stuff you used to hear about contractors all the time. You still hear about it every once in a while, make the news, right? But yeah, so I left at about 21. There's a lot here. Like we got paid very little. It was very nasty. We were, verbally abused and stuff like that. I'm always thankful. My dad's a CPA. He's a brilliant guy, but never involved too much, but he never made money. And I'm going to play something here in a minute too, because I found this stuff I think about this in a different way than I used to. And I try to stay tuned in differently so I can earn money and have the best lifestyle. But I don't view all these experiences as horrible. It's just what happened. And you learn and move forward, and you have failures and successes. But yeah, eventually I left in a very bad situation. I want to go in, it'd take too long to go into all of it, but I've almost, I had no support from the age of 17 forward. And I ran into working for my mother and stepfather for about 2.5 years. And I left. My stepdad was calling me names one day, and I said, hey, don't talk to me like that again, or I'm quitting. And he came in the next day, and I was young and I had a lot of testosterone. I said, I effing told you, and I'm gone. And I left and never looked back and didn't talk to my family for several years. My brother went to work for him, or stayed there. He was supposed to quit, and we were going to buy homes together and mow lawns. We were pretty young still. I was 21. And we had bought a duplex in a bad part of town, and my brother moved out. They gave him my paycheck and bought him with money. And then he stayed. And then I was stuck in this, what was a great dream, in this horrible duplex, like nasty. And then I was stuck there with no support. And so it had mice in it and stuff. It was bad. And then I started mowing lawns, painting curbs. But as a smart kid, I just had this unfortunate situation going on. And so I fought and fought and fought. And it's everything. One thing I do very well nowadays, but it's been a long fight to get here. I own several businesses. I in my lifestyle improves all the time. But there's a lot of stuff that goes with it. My personal experience with family, especially when it's not blood, if it's not blood or marriage, it's definitely not a good idea, in my opinion.
And it wasn't a good idea with my stepdad, just because it was, we're both hard-headed and had our own thing, our own ideas and stuff.
But you left early. Like that was a good thing that you left so early.
Well, we also did it again after,
did.
We worked together later on in life.
Yeah.
But most of what's good about me came from my stepdad. I have to say that. He taught me how to roof. He taught me so many different things, and didn't like him when I was younger. You're not taking my dad's place. My dad passed away when I was in 8th grade. And so that, of course, put an extra chip on my shoulder. I was a jerk to him. We didn't get along younger. Right. But one day he had asked me to come and help him with the roof. And I asked him, well, what are you paying me to help you with this? And he sat down and he said, I want to explain something to you. You're not going to walk into your first college class and ask them how much they're going to pay you to be there.
That's a good point.
I'm teaching you. And from then on, I've known every lesson I've ever learned has a price.
Yeah.
And if it's your sweat, if it's money, you lose money on a job, or you make a bad hire, they all have a price.
Well, every situation is a little different, but it sounds like you had a good take on it. I vowed not to do flooring. My brother did flooring because I was stubborn and extremely high testosterone. Like I disavowed all of it. They eventually sued my brother. I told you this. They eventually, stepfather and mother sued my brother. And now we haven't spoken to my stepdad eventually died, but we haven't spoken to a mother in over a decade now, over 10 years.
That's
so
right.
It ended up very badly in my family, but this wasn't like my dad's a CPA and an attorney who wasn't involved. So I was with my mother and stepfather who weren't educated formally, but and I'm going to talk about that in a minute too, which I don't think is good nor bad, but I'm also very grateful that I wasn't born in the ghetto, or that I was molested, or that there was a lot of things that I'm grateful for. I forgot, I heard this on somebody talking about success, but like just being born the odds of that, you've heard that before, like
Right.
trillions to one, and then being in the United States and then not having horrific things. Most of us are pretty fortunate overall, some of us more than others. And
Right.
and so and adversity sometimes leads to great things, as you see in business all the time. So I'm not complaining from that standpoint. I'm just merely telling stories to people that might be listening.
Yeah.
My stepdad told me, my real father told me, because he was a CPA, said, Nolan, don't, and my first name is Michael, don't get a partner. This doesn't work out well. I'm not, and he was kind of a business person. His dad was a business person. And my grandfather was a farmer and a preacher, which we're all independent in some way. And so everybody has businesses or independence of some sort. But I went ahead and got a partner. First one worked out horribly, horrible story.
Yeah.
He did drugs. It was bad. I got rid of him, then folded up the business. Second partner I bought out over 2 years ago, and he's gone. And that was just more of a tragic. He wasn't an entrepreneur. I gave him a piece of the business and then bought it back, but he didn't start it. Like, like if you're the one like with the grit and the energy and starting stuff, you can't make someone else an entrepreneur.
No.
And there's nothing wrong with not wanting to be an entrepreneur or business person either. We need all types of people. Some people don't want to go through the issues that me and Quinn do. For me, it's worth it. I'm like,
oh yeah.
People all the time look at me and say, why? Especially before I was successful. Now I don't get it so much. Now they're like, oh, I get it, Nolan. But when I was having a hard time and you're not making it, they're like, I won't mention anybody's name, but family members, friends, people that work with me, even like, why do you go through it? Well, because I like freedom. I like lifestyle. I don't like people tell me what to do. I like thinking about legacy and future. And when I take my last breath, I think it'll make me feel better. And about what I did while I was here for me personally.
When it's all over, I don't want them to sit there and say, at my funeral, well, he sat there and sweated in a factory for 60 years.
Yeah.
There's one of the big things for me. Sorry.
He didn't give it his all. He wasn't a good provider. Like, I thought about something on the way over here talking to you, men, and whether people believe this or not, people all about what a man's position is. We don't get love unless we're a good provider. Like a man that isn't a good provider is not well liked by his family, even.
Or society or just in general.
Yeah. So I don't, and I don't think about it negatively from that standpoint. I have that within me. I don't know if it's testosterone or something else, but I want to provide and do a good job, But anyway, I cut you off. I don't know if you remember what you're going to say.
Oh, yeah, no worries. What I was going to say is, for me, one of the biggest things is that ceiling. Being an entrepreneur, having businesses, there is no ceiling. No. You can break through it easy. But a 9 to 5, you're capped on what you're going to earn. Your earning potential, everything is capped. Somebody else has decided that for you. And I'm not going to let somebody else decide that for me.
I'm too unruly, man. Like even before I had testosterone, but when I was a little kid, and you're probably like this too, I'd get crying, fighting, angry with no testosterone hardly, like at like 7, I'd get so angry, I'd cry, and I just would want to fight. And as I got older, I realized nobody want to hire me anyway, but I'm exactly the right type of guy to run a business. Nolan Walker here with Roofing Webmasters. Guys, we own a digital marketing agency, and I've told you that, but we have another podcast. So if you like Roofer's Paradise, be sure to check out Roofing Webmasters podcast. You can find us on any podcast platform, or just search Roofing Webmasters on YouTube, or go to roofingwebmasters.com. But check out the podcast for Roofing Webmasters, where we really educate you about anything and everything marketing related online with roofing. Roofing Webmasters podcast. Check it out. On that note, I talk about him all the time. I love Robert Kiyosaki. He's probably my favorite motivational guy of all times. And now that he's old and cantankerous and gritty, and he doesn't care about being canceled or anything, he makes all these great 60-second clips, and somebody's clips up his social media, and I'm sure puts it up for him. But he probably has camera crew running around. But I'd like to play this and talk about it just for a second. And
Yeah.
I hopefully it'll tell me if you can hear it that well. Hang on.
Sure.
Until you question what's already in your head, you will do what's already in your head. Okay. Go to school, get a job, work hard, save money, get out of debt, invest in the stock market, buy a house, buy a car. Until you question that, you're hypnotized. You'll be a poor person all your life. Look at Amazon, this guy Bezos, right? He's the richest man in the world. Do you think he pays any taxes? He doesn't pay taxes. Trump doesn't pay taxes. I don't pay taxes. So the question is, how do guys like us do it is the question you should be asking. And that's why I say challenge what you've been taught. Why would you go to school and learn nothing about money? Because it's fake money, fake teachers, fake assets, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs. I don't touch any of that garbage until you question.
All right, that was it. So did you hear that well enough?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know how much of that you believe, but I will tell you that because of some adversity in my life, I didn't go to college. I paid for about 80 hours. I never got a job. I worked at two places, Montgomery Wards, when I was a kid. When I was 16, could drive a car, hated it. And then I was a horrible waiter, but I was a waiter at Don Pablo's Mexican food restaurant. That's not around anymore either. That was here in Texas for about 6 months, maybe 4 months. But part of this was like, we had entrepreneurial families and maybe incorrigible to work for anybody. I don't know. But the more that I've done that stuff, the more money I've made. So I had taken my kids go to, I have a 16-year-old daughter, 15-year-old daughter, or about to be 15, and a 13-year-old boy. And they go to a little private Christian school. And mainly it's for conservative values, and so that they don't have to get told any sort of curriculum that's mandated by state. And so we do, some of the stuff's a little bit different that I think about and do, but as I have not been involved, that's what I was going to say. When my oldest daughter was in first or second grade, I took her to an elementary school, and already you had to sign in. They won't let you go see what's going on in the school. And we had moved to a nice school district out in the country. So it wasn't the fancy in-town one. Here in Dallas-Fort Worth is be South Lake. That's where the rich public school system is. We were out in Aledo, high-end country, because I like laid back, not too much pretentiousness for my flavor, Right. And so we were there, and I walked my daughter into school one day. I don't normally do that. My wife does that. And on the side of the wall, it says, we go to school. This was written in big letters. We go to school and get good grades so we can get into good college and get a good job. And and they're walking down the hall, and all these little kids that were about my daughter's age were walking down the hall like this. And they were pretending to have a bubble in their mouth and put their finger over their lips so they wouldn't speak. And my daughter, at the private school before this, when she was in kindergarten, they called her by her name, but in this school, she was number 17. And
wow.
Yeah, and on her paperwork, she wasn't allowed to write her name. They didn't call her number 17, but all of her paperwork said number 17. And I was horrified. Right. As an entrepreneur, free thinking guys, like, this is straight up bullshit. And she went there for a couple of months. That was the end of that. And I'm like, you know what? I don't care. I'm going to figure out how to make enough money and get them at a private school. And I still see stuff. I still think it's ridiculous, by the way, that they go to school and have to abide by state curriculum to pass state tests, even in the private school, because if they don't get to participate in the fake system that they're in. And I could probably go off the rails a little bit too much on this, but I find it all to be a large level of bullshit. So now, if somebody wanted to be a doctor, or lawyer, there's some state guidelines and curriculum, psychiatrist, psychologist, engineer. I think there's some mandated things that are good for society, like this person needs to be able to function and have guidelines. But if they're not doing that, none of my kids are going to do anything like that. Because of the way they've been raised and what they've seen. Not one of my kids wants to go do something like that because of me, right?
Yeah.
So, do you have any comments on that? I'll let you talk about it. Anyway, it was a mouthful of stuff he said there, but
yeah. As far as the college goes, we talked about that a little bit and what the plans were with our children.
We did,
and them going to school and stuff. And my thought on my kids is set up a college fund for them, make sure there's enough money there. And then when you're old enough, if you want to be a doctor, if you want to be a lawyer, something like that requires college, the money's there for it. If not, use that money and start a business.
Right.
Don't let somebody set your cap.
Yeah. It doesn't mean their first business is going to be successful either. No. I don't love the idea of taking a bunch of money. A lot of times when I talk to people, they're like, I had one guy on here, he said, oh, don't get into roofing unless you got a ton of money. I've had 2 people say that.
Really?
Who the hell had any money when they started their small business? I mean, who the hell would go into roofing or a digital marketing agency if they had a ton of money? You know, like you just go start buying apartment complexes. I'm going to go off with Grant Cardone or Robert Kiyosaki and just go ball. I'm a baller immediately. If you don't have money, you're not going into contracting biz. I was in home security. You don't go into that business, right? Yeah. And so I really think that now I've made money to get enough money to move to the next level over and over again. I have a little software company. This stuff's expensive, you know, so I play a little bigger stuff that I do. I'm not on an Elon level. I didn't parlay PayPal into SpaceX, you know, but I took lawn care to something else, to digital marketing agency, to software, but you don't necessarily need a lot of money, you know, to get started on it. But I do think that's not a bad idea. I don't want to restrict my kids from having opportunity, and I don't want to put upon them exactly how I think they should live entirely, but I want to guide them into smart decisions and stuff.
Right.
But, and then on the family side of it, we said we'd talk about this a minute. I'm not going to own any of their business or try to go into business with them. That's my feeling. I don't know so if my kids are each not going to work with each other, and if they choose to, fine, but I'll advise against it. Right. And they'll be set up in their own LLCs, their own corporations, their own S Corp. I'll help them and help them and help them. Their income's their income. And if I do the college fund thing, which I think I'll do, they can use it and go to college. Or if I've got one that I think is going to get a full ride scholarship for co-ed cheer. I'll take the money I would have given to her and invest it in a piece of real estate, and she'll have an investment. So what I would have spent on college goes in their first investment, drops into something, and then it's like, okay, I'm going to burn $250,000 on this crud in one way or another, or a couple $100,000. We can go buy you a condo in Sun Valley, Idaho for $1 million and 25% down, remodel it, and you're making, $75,000 a year net. That is your deal. So here, where do you want it? Where are we going to put it? And that's your thing. So some sort of, and then they get it. The first investment makes more than they would have made, Yeah.
No, helping them invest is great. Building a portfolio, just letting them earn a living, not stressing, not living in the rat race.
Yeah, 2020, you brought up COVID. It seemed to change all of our minds, basically, especially us business people, right? We don't think the same way that we did in 2019.
No, not at all.
Yeah, so some of it's horrifying, but overall, I think that it's a great thought process. It's to me, we all business people, at least, like collectively think differently than we did 3 years ago. Right.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, my company is not the same company that it was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
3 years ago, I was still remodeling bathrooms and kitchens and all that stuff. And since COVID, we've decided just to focus on one thing and be the best at that one thing. And so it's always evolving. And my business isn't the same now as it will be in 3 years. It's always going to evolve. And as tech heavy as we are, I a lot of times tell people we're a tech company as much as a roofing company. But we use the CRMs and everything and make sure no customers are going to fall through the cracks. And there's going to be new tech coming out, and we're going to utilize it when we can.
Right. Yeah. So it's one thing about specialization, just from a marketing standpoint, you cannot optimize on Google. I won't get off in the weeds about marketing too much, but when you're trying to do bathrooms and kitchens, or you're trying to be a GC, a general contractor, Google doesn't like to show that to the consumer because the consumer doesn't like to see it.
Right.
It's called topical relevance combined with user intent, and it relates to something called LSI, or latent semantic indexing, which is Google's version of synonyms, which relate to entity. So that means that if somebody's looking for a roofer, they want to see the word roofer in the name. And when Google sees the word roofer in the name, it includes this genre of keywords that opens up. If Google sees the word contractor or builder or construction, that doesn't mean anything and to them. And the consumer doesn't want a construction builder GC to put on the roof. In fact, the consumer, and I'll put myself in this place, I would not call somebody that is a builder to do my roof. I'm scared that they're going to cost too much. The general contractor, I'm scared doesn't have expertise. And so I want a roofer to come out. And if you're having, it doesn't mean in a smaller market that you're doomed, but in a larger market, at least from an organic standpoint, which is what I always call as the big show where all the leads come from, you're doomed slightly, at least today, because they won't show you in map ranking or organic ranking very well. And so it's smart for multiple reasons, because it aligns with user intent and Google gives people what they want. So, yeah.
You know, we've got, it seems like every other roofing company out here, and we're saturated, tons of roofing companies in our area, but it seems like every other one of them is just called exteriors or remodeling, or, you know.
It can work in your area a little bit, but you will knock them out. So now that, you know, when you're getting the high level marketing that you are from us, that loss of user intent keyword, it'll bump. But when there's quality on the table, typically in these small markets, you'll see a lot of people without the word roof. And frankly, in some markets, I might even say it's okay. Example is Michigan, or someplace really cold. Like, these people have to do and decks or and siding, but I'd still like to see roofing or something. Just if I had to put a little come along on there, and I need to do something different, okay. But at some point in time, if it's a GC, it just fails as a marketing standpoint. It'll just fail.
Right.
I've got a couple that make it, but they're in smaller towns. I can think of a guy right now in Wilkes-Barre, PA. I think it's Wilkesbarre, pronounced Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. And he does well, but it's a lot of tiny little towns together. You can get away with this in like New Jersey, all these little townships. And even where you are, you've got some cities and stuff and town, you know, small towns around that equal a larger market. But if it's in a big market like Dallas, Fort Worth, or Austin, you're toast with these names. They're top. Nolan Walker here with Roofers Paradise. I'd like you to consider being a guest. If you've got a great story to tell for your roofing company, you don't have to be a client of Roofing Webmasters. We'll have you on the show. Check us out at roofersparadise.show. Shoot us an email, or you can call us from the phone number you'll find on roofingwebmasters.com. But I'd love to hear from you and maybe have you as a guest on Roofers Paradise. But yeah, so, you know, as far as I want to say that most of the people that we work with, or that watch this, or that are a roofer, they're entrepreneurs by trade. I've said this before, the roofer is more of an entrepreneur than the other construction trades, because a lot of the other trades are tradesmen. You're an unusual character, frankly. There's very few, and I'm going to just say white males that shingled, roofed. Most of you guys are salespeople or business end only. Now, I know that some have, but to actually be on a roof shingling. And I think it gives you a competitive edge. I had a guy on here the other day that started out shingling. But I think it gives you a competitive edge, and is, if nothing else, is management of these people and processes. I mean, there's no way they're going to get one over on you. what do they do? Pop, 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 pop. You're not going to pop those nails all on one end on you, right? You're going to catch
Right.
it.
Exactly.
They're not going to throw a bunch of shingles in the back of the truck and bill you for extra square, right?
Yeah. No, and I've caught guys before and pulled shingles, full bundles out of dumpsters and stuff. And it happens, but they know that I'm diligent, just like the inspector knows that I'm diligent and knows that I'm checking behind him. Your job is to inspect these guys, and my job is to inspect you. And I've got enough years in the business and actually up there pounding nails, swinging hammers, that I know everything that I'm looking for, and I know everywhere somebody's going to try and cut corners, and it's not going to happen on our job site.
Yeah, I wouldn't imagine. I mean, I think anybody's got to do a little bit of all this. We'll start to sum up here a little bit, but I got a question for you. And I ask everybody this. I don't know if I'll keep asking, but I'm going to ask you. We went through the Robert Kiyosaki thing. I think most of us guys, us entrepreneurial guys that are running a business, and roofers mainly I work with, are entrepreneurs and on this path of that's different. They're not looking to have a job, which there's nothing wrong with that, but they've chosen not to, which ultimately means they're going to work way harder, but hopefully have a better lifestyle, better legacy, more freedom, right? And then that leads somewhere that they're working for all this stuff for a reason. And what's your goals like 10 years from now, Quinn? Like, where do you see yourself? Like, I talk a lot about putting some money away too, like investing and stuff like it. I will say this, I say it a lot of times because I did this wrong. This was me wrong for 20 years. I've been retired, at least retirable way earlier. I'd say I'm retirable now, but I'll work. I'm not done, but I would have been retirable on the Robert Kiyosaki definition of retirement, which is your fixed overhead is can be covered by your passive income off real estate or something like that. So, and you're out of the rat race. That's his definition.
Right.
But what do you plan on in like 10 years from now? What's your plans with everything?
A lot of real estate, just build my portfolio to where it's to the point that I can live comfortably for the rest of my life and still have enough mailbox money that I can give back, that I can donate.
Is it real estate for you? Is that the main thing, is real estate?
I think it makes the most sense.
It does. So one of the reasons I played that, because I had to remind myself, I need to hear his stuff over and over again, because the propaganda of the world will tell you, get a job, go to school, get a college degree, work for somebody, get out of debt, the Dave Ramsey style. Like he's vehemently against Dave Ramsey style of, get out of debt and then just live, basically poor. You're going to basically be poor. But he mainly does like real estate. He buys gold and silver. I've watched him a long time. And if he invests in a company, it's his own business enterprises, right? So he owns stock in his own businesses, but he doesn't own other people's stock. When I look at stock market stuff, it feels like just straight gambling. And then and then on top of gambling, you throw onto it basically intentional business and government manipulation. And it's like, okay, well, how do I win there? And I know a lot of people do, and they have money, and everybody's like a brilliant investor and crypto investor and all this until everything crashes. But real estate really over the course of my lifetime, your lifetime, has only gone down once. Just once. And I don't know that that's going to happen again, but yeah, I like real estate in my own business. So do you remodel stuff, or are you buying, are you planning on doing just a single family, or?
Planning on doing some flips and remodeling.
You're obviously going to remodel your own stuff, right? So.
Sure. Yeah. Which my wife is against. She grew up with her dad remodeling one room at a time. Her house was always constantly being remodeled. She said she's not going to live like that. So
I don't.
It's get in there and get it done and move in.
Well, if you've got the skills to do it with, you can get it all done and move in. Yeah. But I don't really blame her for that. If she puts up with you on all the stuff that you probably have to do for business, but how does she like your new lifestyle and the way you're doing it now? What does she think about it?
Well, you said it earlier about you can't make somebody an entrepreneur, and she's not. So she likes that security and knowing that there's that 9 to 5 and the paycheck coming and stuff. when we first started, there's no security when you first start, but we've started building a lot more security now, and things are getting better. She's getting more comfortable with it, but it's not her lifestyle.
Right. Well, it takes time. I mean, it takes time. Everybody, you look brilliant later, after you've done all this stuff. But yeah, it does take some time to do it. It sounds like it does suck how much we have to learn before we have the expertise to then make money and then have a plan with the money. I made a ton of money before, but I didn't have a plan with the money. So I spent a bunch of it. I never bankrupted or did anything like that, not once. And I've had this business for 12 years, but I didn't take a paycheck for 3 years off the current business. And it's a long story as to why, but it took a long time. Part of that was just gaining expertise and market changes while you don't have any cushion to withstand any blow for anything. But yeah, it took a while. And then after a while you learn and you get it dialed in, you're dialed in well, but yeah. You make money at 75, 80 roofs a year. You just have to run a clean shop. And I think you're doing that already. So do you have a goal to go to a couple hundred roofs, or do you have a plan for that, or do you plan on doubling down, or I think it's okay to stop somewhere, because I think it's very difficult. I know that when you run a business, this is not the type of passive income that Robert Kiyosaki talks about. What you do and what I do is still is a service business, and we draw income even on a shareholder distribution. It's income. It's going to flow through an S corp for most people, and it's income. So that income is difficult, and at a certain point in time, that income check can't just grow exponentially. That income check has to be grown, and then time has to be set aside to invest in passive, whether it's single family homes or something. And if that little thing isn't done to where your income from your business you own is saved and turned into passive, you're going to run the rat race forever,
That's right.
Even on your own business. And so that has to be done, but that can be done at 75 roofs. That can be done at 150, but should it push beyond 250 roofs? I don't know. It gets to the point to where it's like, you're going to burn all your time and not even have time to spend that money on passive income, or invest.
I'd be happy with 150, maybe 200 roofs a year. And I know a lot of guys, they want to go out and start the second and third branches. I don't want to run 2 branches. I don't want to run 3 branches. If we were ever to expand, when we have this process just 1,000% dialed in and we can just point it, might offer up franchises, something like that, and just sell the process to people.
That is the only way that this stuff even works. There's only one act that even comes to mind, and it's small. There's one called Honest Abe.
Honest Abe, yeah.
But the thing is, you can't run these. And I will tell you, if I've been going on a little bit longer here, but talking about second locations, almost every roofer out there has a thought and a dream of a second location. There's a couple of reasons why. And the first one's very logical. I'm worried that I won't have a storm in my area for a while.
Right.
Just had a storm. I love it here in Burlington, but I really like Florida too, and they get hit all the time. So I'm going to go down to Florida, Sugar Coast, where I can buy a house and put one there. And if the storm hits there, I'll be okay. The problem is that we're dealing with service, we're dealing with people, and and most of us can't manage this stuff. And I've done this for years. It's been 12 years now. I've dealt with hundreds and hundreds of roofers, and 95% of them will fail on 2 locations. 95%. A lot of them will keep going and going. It'll splinter. They'll increase overhead. They'll lower conversion, and it all just kind of goes away. And that's where I was saying, get in where you fit and figure out where you are right then. You're better off earning income on something that's better than you have now. So go from 75 to 200, and the income's fabulous. You already pay your bills right now. You don't increase overhead until you increase passive income, i.e. single family home. And if you don't run that program, if that income from the business grows and goes to grow the business income more, it will fall down on itself because of what we do for a living.
Right.
In
200, I can still put my foot on every property and walk around the house and make sure I don't find any debris at 200.
There'll come a time where you can do that one thing. You might not. You can delegate some things. You might find somebody can step foot, and then you watch that person every once in a while, and you watch other things, and you know you can keep that together. But I said this the other day, you got to get back in the weeds and stay sharp until you're done. And you're either, if you don't take income and get passive, you'll work till you die and get less than you want. If you get income grown, don't grow too much, control expenses, have nice income, and go passive, you'll quit when you're ready to be done, and your lifestyle will improve. And that's the only way out. There is no other way out.
No.
You could get passive and choose that you like it and have a well-oiled machine. Like I do 150 like nobody's business, and I could have done 225, but Quinn ain't doing that all day long anymore, and I'm okay with 150. And I do go back and forth from North Carolina to Florida or wherever, and that thing runs well. And you could do that for longer until one of the kids is old enough or something, right?
Right.
But it's got to be somewhere in there. It just doesn't hold together. You just don't hold together business income in a service business forever without huge involvement, right?
Yeah.
Anyway. Well, man, I wish you well. I tell you what, you remind me of, I made a fortune when I did this. I hope you're right at that right point in time for this, you know?
Thank you.
Yeah, the way you're doing it. My wife bought a roof this way back in 2018. Her dad died, and we flew into this area for the house. The roof had to be replaced as a condition of the sale, right? And insurance actually paid for it. But she didn't want to talk to anybody. Her dad had died. She's grieving. I was in a different state at the time, and she wanted to see a man in the house. And so they did it over the phone, and then the guy came to pick up a check. And that was it. That was quite a while ago, right? So
yeah. Well, and ours, you just pay online. You pick the day you want your roof installed online. Everything can be done online. Everything other than the inspection before and after and the roof installation. Everything else can be done online.
Yeah. I'd buy from you. I'd buy from you. All right, man. Well, take it easy. I appreciate you coming on here. You know, I don't know if you had anything else. We went over so much stuff. I'm not going to ask. I had a couple other things, but it's too late in the game here. But I appreciate you. I hope you make a ton of money and get everything you want out of all this. And I think you're doing great. I love the concept, the brand, everything sounds great. So, but thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Nolan, and thanks for having me.
All right, man. I'll see you.
All right, have a good one. Bye.